Welcome back. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but our sponsors at Horizon Health Services are committed to helping our community's mental health all year long. Joining me now from Horizon Health is Patrick Green. Hi, Patrick. Thanks
Hello.
for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want you to start out with kind of the obvious, which is why it's so important to take care of our mental health.
Sure. If you think about it, mental wellness or mental health intersects with all areas of life. It impacts everything. And it's not just in struggle, but also when things are going well. It affects everything. It affects how we operate at work, how we engage at home with our friends and family, how we develop and maintain relationships. It impacts how we eat, how we sleep, how we exercise, and even play. So when something is off, if you're dealing with some type of struggle, it really becomes very important to attend to that. Otherwise, what I see happen a lot of times is folks apply this approach of kind of like powering through. And sadly, that does something, but it does one thing really well, which is makes whatever you're dealing with more intense. Powering through amplifies distress. It gives it power and energy. So it really becomes very important to just address whatever is happening in the moment. Like the best way I can describe it is like it's like trying to drive your car with a parking brake on, right? You could do it, but it's not advisable, right? I mean, it's something might happen to your car. And so that's kind of what we do when we are struggling with something and we choose not to attend to it.
So what are some advice you would give to someone who's struggling with their mental health?
So interestingly, when I get that question, people think that I'm going to start with like a skill or an approach. But actually, what I recommend is a shift in mindset. That the very first step in attending to any struggle is what I call permission to be human. That it's super important to give yourself permission just to be a human being and in struggle. It is part of the human experience. We all go through it. It is normal. If we don't allow that, we don't give ourselves that kind of grace, it's really difficult to then take the next step and do something. So the very first thing you do is say, this is happening and it's okay for me to be having this experience. Then you can begin to attend to it.
Okay, so you've done the first step, which is acknowledging what you're feeling and acknowledging that you might be struggling.
That's right.
So what are some coping skills you would suggest?
I like to begin with breathing. It's a little cliche, but it's surprisingly very effective. There's actually a lot of science behind why meditative breathing is very helpful. It impacts one of our cranial nerves, the vagus nerve, which will affect part of our sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically slowing down your system. So the way I describe it is when you're doing a meditative breath, it's like pressing the calm button. So there's a biological reason. But it's also foundational, that if you begin with the breath, it sets the stage for all other skills and approaches.
It seems like such an easy task to do,
Right.
but just taking a minute of mindful breathing a
Right.
day can really change things for a lot of people.
Think of it like this. If you've ever exercised or worked with a trainer, like one of the things they always tell you to do,
Keep
breathe,
breathing.
right? We hold our breath when we're exercising, we're straining, right? We need to breathe. It is so important just to allow ourselves to get into a place where we can do something different.
Patrick, what would you say some of the biggest obstacles are to change when you're kind of looking to better your mental health?
So what ends up happening is that we have these ideas of change where we want to kind of do something different. What I have noticed is like the biggest challenge is stopping. That we tend to stop before the actual thing helps. That we go for a little bit and then we stop and say to ourselves, this isn't working. And, in that case, we would be right and kind of wrong, because we would be right, it's not working because we stopped too soon. But if we kept going, whatever we were doing would have an impact. And so that tends to be what usually gets in the way for someone to experience any type of recovery.
Well, when it comes to recovery and mental health, it is an odyssey. It's a journey,
Yes,
right?
totally.
So how can Horizon Health Services, how are you providing for our community while they're going on?
So one of the hardest things to do in recovery is to ask for help. And it's also one of the most important things you can do if you're struggling at all. It is not weakness. It is just the opposite. And so once you've taken that step and asked for help, we have a whole range of things that we can offer. We have inpatient services, outpatient services, individual sessions, groups, medications, peer support, family support. So really what happens is once you get through the door, then we take a look at what's happening for you, what your story is, and then what's going to be helpful for you. So it's very individualized in terms of what is going to be like the appropriate set of interventions that are going to help you specifically.
Alrighty, and viewers, if you are looking, if you're struggling, or if someone you know is looking for help with their mental health, you can visit our sponsors at horizon-health.org. Thanks again for coming in, Patrick.
Thank you very much.